Welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast, where I, Genevieve Faulkner, share what I'm becoming aware of. Hello and welcome to the Becoming Aware podcast. My name is Genevieve Faulkner, your host, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hi. So what is your relationship to the universe like? Are you able to engage with it? Are you able to receive awareness from it? Are you using that energy to create your life with? Or have you created points of view, or are you suppressing emotional energy that's creating a blockage between you and all of that energy? So this is what I wanted to talk about today. I was talking to someone this week who was telling me how much resentment they're holding on to towards the universe for not delivering on what they've been asking for yet. And I'm very grateful towards this person for having that vulnerability to actually be aware of that, because a lot of people will be holding on to all sorts of points of view towards the universe and not be acknowledging it within their subconscious. And when you're not acknowledging it, it limits your power. It limits your ability to create your life because it creates you being separate from that energy. So I wanted to kind of break down what's really going on a lot of the time with regards to why this is there, okay? So you will know if you've watched any of my other videos that we carry all sorts of belief systems within our subconscious, some of which are from what we've created in this lifetime. And some of it is actually from our parents, what they've experienced, what our ancestors have experienced before them, what we've experienced in past lives. Like, the belief systems can come from all different places and spaces. And for whatever reason, we hold on to them because our brain or mind thinks that they're kind of helping us. They're helping us learn, or they're serving us in some way. But it's not actually the case. A lot of the time they're doing the opposite, and they're keeping us stuck. They're keeping us limited, and they're keeping us from accessing the power that we have available. So looking at how you feel about the universe, really being honest, letting that all come up and out is something that will allow you to have a lot more power and speed with being able to manifest things. So I wanted to talk about this resentment part, okay? So why do we resent the universe? What's that about? So resentment is created for a number of different reasons, but one of those reasons, a lot of the time, we can have this programming that makes us think we need to create resentment in order to create a boundary. So if I resent this person, if I'm angry at this person, it creates that space, right? We don't actually need it to do that. It's just that we think we do a lot of the time. And so we can be creating the resentment to create the space so that we have a sense of ourselves beyond the universe. Yet we're also doing it a lot of the time as a protection mechanism. So I want to talk about a couple of reasons why we might think we need to be protected from the universe. So the first reason is we can actually have this fear of being blamed for things. So the universe, this is a big topic. Within our subconscious, we can have so many different points of view with regards to the universe, because the universe connects to all of the programming that we have about all of the different religions that we've experienced or been part of in any lifetime, or that our ancestors have experienced. So there can be so much coding around what God is and our relationship with God based upon the things that we've been part of. And so for some people, they can have all of these points of view that they have to suffer to be close to God. They have to suffer to learn. They have to suffer to grow. Just one sec. Sorry, I got distracted by a little girl playing with my car outside. So we can have, these belief systems that are about us thinking that we have to suffer to grow. Or we can also have the belief system that, if we do something bad, then God is going to punish us. And so we can create that resentment towards God. So we're not one with God. So we don't have to engage with God, so that God's not then going to create this horrible, horrible thing to punish us and teach us our lesson, right? Now, none of this is actually true, okay? So the energy of the universe is actually this energy that is very neutral. Like it's just pure source energy. It has no rightness. It has no wrongness. It doesn't judge you. It's just the energy of everything all around us. It's every single frequency within the universe, right? So it's just energy. So being with it, being one with it, is a very peaceful experience. It's a powerful experience. It can allow you to actually begin to, be more in charge of what it is that you're creating, because you have the ability through using that energy to transmute things, right? To change the frequency of things. And so the fear of being blamed for things, people can have this belief that if they're one with the universe, then everything that everyone is projecting about God, they're going to take on, right? They're going to be blamed for everything that God's done, they're suffering because of. And so that's not actually true. So the truth is, like, that's the reality. Like when you're separating from that universe energy, that's when you're creating the suffering, because that's where you're creating an inability to change things. Whereas when you're actually able to connect to that energy of oneness, what happens is, if somebody's projecting something at you, you can instantly transmute it into a different frequency. Like energy is just energy. If someone's projecting something, they're just projecting energy at you. You can receive that energy and work with that energy and change it and use it to your advantage, right? So that's the power that you have when you're connected to your source energy, to the universe. So there is nothing to fear there. So just acknowledging that sometimes can be enough for people's subconscious to shift and change and release that fear. Other times there is some work to do. So it might be that doing some meditation work and actually acknowledging the fears that you have about the universe or God or what's going to happen, and asking for that to release can be enough. For those of you that sounds a little bit too tricky to do by yourself, learning theta healing and doing theta healing sessions is one way that I began to become much more aware of my connection with the universe. So we work on the belief systems within the subconscious that are there, that are limiting the connection, but also we do exercises to develop that connection so that you are always feeling connected and engaged. So if that interests you, you can check that out. I do teach classes in this. But yeah, for some of you, just acknowledging what is true will shift and change things. So other people can have this fear of their own power. So they don't want to connect to source energy because they're afraid of the power they have. And where that comes from a lot of the time is where they've misused that power. So we have had so many different lifetimes on this planet, other planets, other dimensions, places, spaces. We've had all sorts of different capacities. And sometimes we can get a little bit power drunk and misuse those capacities. And in some cases, when people do this, they can go into judgment of themselves for what they've done in those lifetimes as a way of separating from the capacity so that they never behave like that again. This just limits your life. It creates suffering and pain, okay? It doesn't create anything great, and it doesn't create anything great for anyone else either. So the key to changing this is looking at what it is that you did. So going into a meditative state and asking yourself, like, what is it that I'm afraid of doing if I actually am connected to source? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? That will often bring up the thing that you've already done, that you're judging yourself for. And then asking yourself the question, like, what did I choose this lifetime for? Like, what did I choose this experience for? What did I learn from having this experience? Because we have all of these different lifetimes to evolve, to grow, to experience different things. When you have the experience, and you integrate the experience, and you allow yourself to acknowledge every way you have grown or what you've learned from that experience, you don't need to hold on to the judgment and the resentment to protect yourself from your own power. So it might be that perhaps you were really abusive with your power in order to learn not to be so flippant, not to be so reactive. Perhaps you've learned to actually hold your power and to be more mature with it, right? Through this experience of kind of having the power perhaps before you were ready for your power and behaving in all sorts of inappropriate ways. When you can acknowledge that you know that now, like your being has that awareness of what's going to happen if you behave in a way that's, not honoring of everybody, then you don't need to hold on to that judgment anymore. Okay, so then you can begin to access that power again to create your life with. For some of you, you might have some betrayal and abandonment wounds. So sometimes this can connect to grief. We can have all sorts of lifetimes where perhaps we loved someone deeply and they left, they died. And that can create this feeling of being betrayed by the universe, being let down by God, right? Particularly if it's like a situation like losing a child, that can create this deep grief that can span over lifetimes and a deep resentment of having that experience and loss. Now, when we're in the physical plane, everything can feel very intense and, that kind of experience is difficult, right? But when we're willing to connect to or acknowledge the other dimensions and other spaces and more of what's beyond just the physical plane, we can get a different perspective with regards to the things that we experience in whatever lifetime. So in those kinds of experiences where somebody's lost someone and they're holding on to that grief and they're feeling betrayed by the universe, it's about them, it's about their pain, right? When we connect to that source energy and ask what was really going on here? Why did this really occur? Then we can get a different kind of awareness as to why things were created the way that they were. So it could be that perhaps that being needed to go for whatever reason. It was their time. They needed to go. They had done whatever they needed to do in the lifetime that they were living. And it was what was going to create greater for them. But also it was what was going to create greater for you. Because sometimes we need to have some sort of journey of growth that is beyond or different to the ones that we love. And so there can be times when people will leave this planet because they're knowing that it's not just the best choice for them, but it's also the best choice for their loved ones, because it means that their loved ones are going to have a growth experience that is beyond what they could have if they were still alive. Okay. And so when you get these kinds of awarenesses come in, it can allow you to kind of create a little bit of peace with regards to the situation, because you can see the kind of divine intelligence at play with regards to what was created, because everything that is created with that divine intelligence. There's a reason for why things play out the way that they play out. Nothing is by accident. Everything, we have an ability to gain from every experience if we are curious about why we've created the situation and not go into judgment of ourselves or go into judgment of the universe for what it is that we've created. If you're dealing with something like that, where there's this deep grief or deep loss, the key to shifting and changing it is being present with yourself in a way that perhaps you would be present with another if they were in pain, right? So if you had a friend with you and they were grieving, you would probably just sit with them and be with them and maybe just let them cry, right? Just let them just be sad in your presence until they started to perhaps, feel a little better, maybe feel a little bit lighter, maybe have that release. Maybe, grief is a process and it sometimes takes some time to shift or move through. But, having that experience can begin to create that movement, right? So it's doing that for yourself that actually allows the betrayal, the abandonment, and the resentment towards the universe to dissipate and release. So being that person that you perhaps maybe have been for others, but maybe you're not always being that for yourself. People have a tendency often to gift, be one way with people, and then sometimes some of us aren't always the same way with ourselves. So it's being in that perhaps meditative state where you're connecting to that part of you that was in that lifetime and acknowledging the pain and being with that pain until it starts to dissipate and release. Because pain stays when there's a resistance to it, okay? So when you're running from that pain, when you've decided it's too painful to move beyond, you can't move beyond it. If you're willing to be with the pain, it actually will often begin to dissipate and release because you no longer are avoiding whatever has created the pain in the first place. Now, with the betrayal energy, right? So with all of it, with the resentment, with the betrayal, with the abandonment, everything that we feel towards the universe a lot of the time is a projection about how we feel about ourselves. Okay, so when we unconsciously or consciously hold resentment towards the universe, we more than likely are resenting ourselves as well. If we feel abandoned and betrayed, we more than likely feel abandoned and betrayed by ourselves as well. And so the key to shifting and changing that is looking at, what part of me do I feel abandoned by? What part of me do I feel betrayed by? And it's making peace with that part. Now, for a lot of people that have gone through a lot of hardship, like if you've gone through struggle in this lifetime, if you haven't got what you want, if you've been abused, you might have some of this abandonment and betrayal stuff towards the universe, but you also may have this towards yourself. And if you've got that, the part of you that you need to make peace with is the part that chose to be here, right? So the higher self part, the part of you that before you were born put this all in motion. So we are the creators of our reality beyond just this physical dimension. We choose our parents, we choose the timing of coming here. And there's a reason why we do that. So we don't just come here for for nothing. There's all sorts of growth. There's all sorts of learning. There's all sorts of experiences that we can have on this planet. But also some of us choose to come here to change the consciousness, to end the patterns, within relationships or the cycles that are playing out. Because this planet, this earth, there's all sorts of cycles that get repeated because of all of the stuff that has been suppressed or people hold on to that create that cycle replaying over and over. And so some people have chosen lifetimes where there's a lot of, difficult experiences, particularly early on, because they've been born into families with a lot of this dense programming, because they know they have the capacity to change and end these patterns. Now, they know this from the space of their being. They're beings that are way more powerful and way more magical than perhaps the person they think they are in this lifetime. And so when you're functioning from this kind of higher or different dimension, right? I want to say whatever space that is, the place between lives, we have a greater awareness of the bigger picture, right? We can perceive all of the lifetimes that we've lived. We know where we're headed because we've got these kind of targets in motion with regards to what it is we want to create, what it is we want to experience, what we want to change, right? And so to that kind of like the space of that, our beings from that space, everything seems easier because we have our power. We know how powerful we are. We know what we can change. But when we come here, we're immersed in this energy that's way denser than who we actually are, particularly if you've been born into families that have a lot of suppressed energy and emotion and belief systems. And also, like, there is kind of like this forgetting that happens for a lot of people as they go through that process of being born, forgetting of who they are. And that's a gradual process. Like, if you look into a baby's eyes a lot of the time, like, they know who they are. But slowly over time, people often get entrained into forgetting who they are to fit in with the family or, you know, the people that surround them. And so you might be one of these people that has chosen all sorts of difficulties because you know you have the ability to end these patterns. But if you went through lots of difficult things, it might be that you're feeling abandoned by yourself, or you're feeling abandoned by the universe because you're not connected to the part of you that chose to be here, the part of you that put this in motion, right? And so the key to shifting and changing this is to start to get curious about, like, what is the reason my being chose to be here? What is the reason? Like, if I knew these experiences were going to occur, if I knew that I was going to have to, like, you know, have these struggles, why would I have chosen it? What was the reason? What was the gift of the experience? What am I trying to set out or choose to change? The more curious you get about that, the more you start to connect to the energy of, like, your higher self, like the parts of your being that you've disconnected from. And with that will come more energy, more awareness of what you're actually capable of, and possibly peace, like more ease, because the more you connect to those parts of yourself and connect to the, like, have the acknowledgement of everything that your being knew before you forgot who you were, the more you can begin to dissolve and change and transform anything that you've been stuck in. Okay? So that's the part of you that you've got to make peace with. If you're feeling a lot of resentment and abandonment from the universe, if you can forgive yourself for choosing what you've chosen. And I know for some of you, I'm laughing because, you know, like, this is a journey that I've been on, right? Like, this particularly, like, when I first found theta healing and explored all of this in depth and really looked at, like, the things that, like, I'd experienced and why I'd chosen them, you know, it's funny to me now because it's kind of like I have the awareness of other dimensions, yet at the same time, like, I'm aware of how hard things can be for people here. Like, I am aware of how difficult things can be. So, you know, it can be a process with this. It might be that you start to ask these questions and still feel frustrated, still feel angry, still feel like you're not getting anywhere. And if that's the case, keep asking the questions, because even if it's just one little awareness at a time, even if it's, you know, the beginning of kind of just that energy of your being starting to filter down through all of that programming a little more and a little more and a little more each day, then that resentment and that anger and that abandonment and that frustration is going to change. Okay? You'll become more of who you actually are and who you are supposed to be on this planet. That goes beyond whatever it is that you've experienced so far. Yeah, I'm just asking kind of, is there anything else that I need to talk about here with regards to this? No, I think that's kind of it. I think that's it for now. So I hope this is going to contribute to those of you that need to hear all of this. I know it's rather a lot, and it might push a few buttons for a few people. Do, try to ask different questions or maybe meditate or whatnot if you're having discomfort with everything that I'm saying, because it will create some shifts. But if you are interested, I do teach theta healing. You can check that out via my website, online, so wherever you are in the world. And I do also have a Create Your Reality Club starting this month, where we just kind of like address whatever energy is up. So some of this stuff can get resolved through talking about things and then bringing in energy healing downloads to shift and change the energy. So there is that support if you're looking for it. But I do hope this has given you some awareness about the bigger picture, because we are so much more than what we have been entrained into believing that we are on this planet. There is so much gaslighting on this planet and brainwashing that is designed to stop us knowing like who we actually are and the power we have available. And the more you can kind of be curious about that and be willing to let things go, the more you can actually step into that power and begin to create your reality. Now, wow, this is the last thing that I need to mention with this. So if you've watched this and you decide to kind of like start to shift and change things with regards to tapping into that power of the universe, it is really important that you acknowledge that you are on that journey of changing things. And it's important to acknowledge the way in which you're using your energy and the thoughts that you have. Because as you begin to build that muscle of increasing that connection to the universe and becoming stronger and stronger and more the energy of you, you have more power, you have more potency. And if you are thinking things that are the opposite of what you desire, then that's what's going to be created. Okay? So if you're in this cycle of like feeling like you're not getting what you want, part of this, if you feel like any of this rings true for you, it might be to work on that part of you that feels abandoned and resentful towards the universe and towards yourself, possibly. But the other part is looking at, well, hang on a minute, what happens if my asks show up? Because there might be other blocks too that you're holding on to that are stopping you from actually achieving what it is that you want to achieve. But it is also important to make sure that you're using your ability to think and focus on the things that you want to focus on in a positive way. So it's acknowledging the changes as they occur, acknowledging when you release something, acknowledging when you have a different awareness to what it is that you previously had, and acknowledging that you are in the process of changing things so that you're not keeping yourself in that old paradigm of feeling stuck and like you've got no power and no ability to change stuff. So I hope that helps, guys. Thank you so much if you have been listening to this and you've got this far. I do appreciate you. If there is anything that you would like me to do a podcast episode or a video about, do leave a comment, send me a message, and I will do my best. So yeah, have a good day, guys.